Greetings, WHAP warriors. This is a very hastily made video. Just trying to get you the information that we would have gone over the first 15 minutes of class today, talking about the age of industry and during the Industrial Revolution. So you should be watching this on your individual device. If you don't have a device, you can watch it with the person next to you. Make sure you're taking notes, getting down the bold. Most of it's bold into your journal to be checked at a later date. Industry has affected the way we live, from textiles and clothes we wear, making cheaper clothing so that that people could have additional sets of clothing, to railroads and the speed of transit. One of the interesting things is there was actual articles in scientific magazines about, can the human body sustain being in a vehicle that goes 35 miles per hour. That was a serious concern because no horse had ever gone that fast for a sustained period of time. So that was a serious concern. You also had coal, iron, and steel, which allowed for heavy machinery, allowed for the building of skyscrapers and railroads, and later on automobiles. Coal is going to fuel industry, and you're going to have mines in the Appalachians, iron mines as well, as far north as Michigan, and steel, obviously, in Pittsburgh. Oil is going to fuel automobiles and the internal combustion engine, which is going to be popularized during this time period. And then the common man is going to luck out because a man named Henry Ford is going to introduce the Model T, which is going to be an inexpensive version of the automobile for the everyman, every person. Meat packing, specifically in Chicago, cheaper meat. However, it was hard to know what was in your meat. I'll just ask Upton Sinclair and the book The Jungle, which is essentially about the travails of the meatpacking market. And typically we would take time now and stop this and read some excerpts from the Jungle about the meatpacking industry, but we will do that upon my return or tomorrow in a different video. Fruit and sugar were evident of foods from far away. You had fruits, bananas, Dole, Sanford B. Dole, bananas and pineapple and coconuts traveling across the country, across the world, quite frankly, thanks to refrigerated rail cars and the desire for them. And then you had durable goods, the Sears and Amazon effect, I call it. Sears, you all are of an age now where you can understand how Amazon, you go on, you look for something you want, you order it, and it's there in a few days, and there's that gratification that you get it. Sears was similar. Sears had catalogs, and you would order anything from a broom to soap to a washing board to a house. You can actually order a house and put it together and be delivered at the train station. So pretty cool. There's actually, I think there are 2 Sears houses here in Cascade. If you want to watch this crash course on your own time, you can. Just go to YouTube and type in Crash Course World History, Industrial Revolution. It's a good little cultural supplement, and I highly recommend it. There is a change in business during this time period. From the old ways, which was a small proprietorship in Google industry, not Google industry, sorry, I'm a little out of sorts. Cottage industry, worked in a home or the adjacent workshop. I like to call these a mom and pop shop or a family business. You knew who you worked for. You worked with maybe your family, maybe the person down the street. You went to church together. And it was a cohesive unit all in one room for the most part. The new way was corporations and capitalism, where capital was the factory, resources, and labor to manufacture goods. And these truly became faceless companies with large bureaucracies that produced goods that traveled near and far across the globe. Effects of industrialization included the working conditions. And industry created new jobs. It did. It gave new jobs to folks. You also saw a flight from the rural areas to the urban areas, which would tip the scales for the urban areas in the early 20th century. Factories were dirty, unsafe, and hazardous. They had very few guardrails, very few safety procedures. You think about there's a organization called OSHA now, which essentially is a workplace safety organization. There was none of that. Workman's comp, factory bosses were harsh. You could be whipped, you could be beat, you could be, basically harassed for not doing your job. You could have your pay docked. It was very, very demoralizing in some cases. And there was no insurance, no workman's comp, or no medical leave. So, if you caught your finger in the machine and you took it off, well, you're expected to be to work tomorrow. If your hair got caught and took out a piece of your ear, well, see you tomorrow. No sick days. Today I'd have to show up, right? So working conditions definitely were lacking. Social classes. You have the working class, which was overworked and underpaid, and they were doing much of the work. You had foreman and skilled labor making up the middle class. And middle class was growing during this period. The American middle class and the middle class would grow in other countries thanks in large part to these bureaucratic jobs, like a clerk or a foreman or a skilled worker or a machinist that fixed the machine. But your everyday workers, your coal miner, your line worker, your shop sweep, the person working on the line, they would be in your working class. Factory owners and merchants would form the upper class and would make loads and loads and loads of money because of unfettered, unregulated capitalism at the time, which was a bit of a free-for-all, and that would change in the early 20th century. Living conditions. Cities lack sanitation and building codes. Tomorrow we will be watching a clip about George Waring and how nasty the cities could get, and how excrement, and I usually do a whole thing on it, excrement would be disposed of in the street, and your rotten fruit or food in the glass, and kids didn't have playgrounds, and so you'd play on the heaps of trash, and it was just if a horse died, it died in the street. Who takes care of the horse, right? If there's no municipal services, how does that go? There was scarce housing. It was the sanitary conditions were lacking. Lack of potable water. Social services were nearly non-existent, and there's tenements. Tenements were these 5, 6, and 7-story wooden, sometimes buildings that were death traps largely. They'd have 1 or 2 bathrooms outside. They'd house up to 100 people. Poor ventilation. Be very dangerous. They were basically, like I said, a fire trap. And but in many cities, tenements were the cheap available housing. And then epidemics. From cholera to tuberculosis, smallpox, there would be epidemics in these cities, and that would be very problematic. In fact, that's the other little clip we'll watch tomorrow about the cholera outbreak and how a scientist named Jon Snow, so for you Game of Thrones fans out there, no relation, but Jon Snow nonetheless is going to solve the cholera outbreak in London. I'm going to take you through a very quick walking tour of industrialization. This is the kind of the darker underbelly. Now, obviously, cheap available goods are going to be a benefit. That's going to be a positive. This is a little bit more of the more difficult side of the industrialization. You have tenement housing, child labor. Child labor. You see these children. Imagine being 10, 11, 12 years old, working in a factory year-round. Jacob Riis, a Danish immigrant, would author a book called How the Other Half Lives, and he would essentially take pictures of New York immigrants in their homes and in their workplaces, and he would show it to wealthy people and upper-class people, much to their shock. And it really exposed what was going on right down the street for the people of New York. These are children who are, sleeping on some trash here in a barrel, mutual protection, right? Boys of the street. Girls working in a textile factory, barefoot, very little precautions. I mean, you can see their kind of bedraggled dress. I mean, think about being 12 years old and working through your leaving school because, there's no purpose. Why go to school? I'm going to go work in a local textile factory at 12 or 13. I mean, that'd be tough. little boy. I mean, that's not safe at all. This is one of the most famous tenement pictures of all time. I mean, you can count how many people. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You can see that person's feet, kind of. 7 people sharing a room in New York City. An alleyway. You can imagine trying to have fun as a kid. No playground. Just doing your best to get by. What a kind of a dirty, grimy, grungy area. Again, a tenement. This would be where wood, pot-bellied stove. 1, 2, 3. He's using the other person's shoes as a pillow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Person standing there, 6. I think that's another person over there, 7, perhaps. We'll talk about this tomorrow, so I'm going to end it there. We'll talk about Adam Smith and Wealth of Nations, laissez-faire capitalism, free market economy. His book Wealth of Nations that comes out in 1776, The Laws of Economics, and what the technical definition for capitalism is. And so we'll be talking about that tomorrow or next week. Please make sure that you get those notes into your journal. I'll be checking on those upon my return. Make sure they're neat and complete, and I'll see you soon.